For most of the world, this place is barely a rumour. A name from an old story, somewhere east, easy to overlook and easier to forget. That's the first mistake everyone makes. To reach it, you first have to get past the mountains. A wall of Carpathian stone that has kept this land hidden, and apart since long before the maps of Europe were ever drawn. Behind it, the modern world quietly lost track of an entire country. Deep valleys the age of machines never reached. Villages where the roads still belong to horse carts, and the night still belongs to whatever moves in the trees. And scattered through it are things that were never meant to be found. A giant stone face that stares out from a peak no hand ever carved. A village drowned beneath a lake the colour of rust. And somewhere below the ground, a hollow world cut deep into the dark. Because the deeper in you go, the stranger it turns. There are woods the locals won't enter, even in daylight. And old people who go quiet the moment you ask the wrong question. They aren't superstitious. They've simply lived here long enough to know something the rest of the world forgot. And they're in no hurry to tell you what it is. This is Transylvania. And somewhere past these mountains waits the thing every visitor comes back talking about. The one they can never quite describe. And never quite shake once they've seen it for themselves. About 7 million people live in Transylvania, a third of Romania. Most of them spread thin across mountain villages and a handful of old stone towns. And the first thing they do with a stranger is feed them. Before your coat is even off, a glass of homemade plum brandy is in your hand, poured strong enough to sting. Then comes the pot that's been over the fire since dawn. Pork and sour cabbage, gone soft and deep, heavy with paprika and finished with a spoon of sour cream. And on the poorer tables, there's mamaliga, a simple mound of cornmeal that once carried whole families through winters when there was nothing else at all. That's the thing about this place. It holds on to what the rest of the world let go of. It's why the people here would never trade it for anywhere on earth. And why what waits past these mountains is stranger than anything the world ever imagined. In the shadow of a limestone ridge in the Transfăgărășan Mountains, a Hungarian village has preserved its traditional look across generations, with white houses, green trim, and low roofs. That place is Rimetea, where even the sunrise behaves strangely, appearing once and slipping behind the ridge, then rising again, as if the day hesitated. Bright, uniform homes line narrow streets beneath sheer stone walls, so the village has a clean, almost unreal look against the towering cliffs above. Those cliffs dictated survival, squeezing farmland into narrow patches and forcing families to rely on grazing animals along steep slopes. Iron once lay hidden in the mountains, and villagers carved it out by hand, as mining and metalwork became a lifeline when crops alone were never enough. Trade followed the mountain paths, and over time, this mix of labour and isolation built a fiercely independent community that even refused forced labour when pressured to submit. That stubborn pride bursts into life during the Rimetea ethnographic festival, when the streets fill with music, carried by violins and stamping boots. Locals wear intricate Hungarian costumes, some of the most elaborate in the region, not as a show for outsiders, but as a reunion of identity handed down through families. Food, dance and craft all return at once, unchanged and familiar, as if the village briefly steps back into its own past. Ask anyone here what dinner smells like on a Sunday, and the answer is almost always the same. Paprika, beef and onions simmering low in a cast iron pot. Here, villagers still talk about gulyas as a field food, once cooked in heavy pots by herders and workers who needed one meal to carry them through the day. Paprika turns each pot bright and bold, brought long ago through trade, and now treated almost like a family treasure in many kitchens. Every household swears theirs is best, and people joke that locals can guess which family cooked a bowl after just one taste. During festivals and name days, tables sag under rows of steaming pots, each slightly different, yet all tied together by slow patience and paprika heat. Elders tease the young that hurried goulash tastes nervous, so cooks learn early that good stew here is as much about time as ingredients. Smoke thins over the courtyard, while Pietricica looms in the background, like a stony neighbour listening in on every meal. From the village it looks close enough to touch, yet the climb can still surprise visitors who underestimate how steep its limestone walls feel underfoot. This limestone ridge makes it famous for the double sunrise, when the sun appears, hides behind the crest, then rises again for villagers watching from below. Locals like to say the mountain plays with light, a nickname inspired by that unusual spectacle. Its Hungarian name literally means Rock of the Shiklas, recalling the Shikla people who once guarded these frontier mountains. Two main peaks stand on either side of a narrow ravine, and from certain angles, the ridge resembles a broken stone wall, split down the middle. Wind hits differently near the cliffs, snapping at clothes and voices, and even a small shout can bounce around the rock and sound louder than it really is. In storms, clouds hook themselves on the upper ledges, and from the village below, the peak can seem to hold its own private weather above the white houses. Old stories claim that anyone who reaches the top on a clear day can see far into Sekeli country, and that belief has drawn hikers and local teenagers up those worn paths for years. Along the ridge, the outline of Colțești fortress cuts into the sky and recalls an age when these hills meant watch duty, not hiking routes. From its rocky perch, guards once scanned every path below, ready to send signals if dust on the horizon hinted at riders who were not welcome. Stories in the area still praise its stubbornness, because this fortress reportedly held off attackers more than once while other strongholds nearby fell. Today, with walls dropped to knee height in places, people can still walk the old courtyard and trace towers and rooms just by following the broken stone. Builders raised it without engines or modern tools, hauling blocks up the hill and trusting stone, teamwork, and fear of invasion more than any blueprint. Wind now patrols the route where guards once walked, and the valley below, once a border to defend, has turned into a path for hikers and weekend travellers. Bucegi Mountains wait farther along Transylvania's spine, where cliffs, forests and high pastures stack up like steps in the sky. This massif forms part of the southern Carpathians, where broad walls of rock funnel storms and winds along the ridges. Across those heights, broad plateaus break into soft alpine meadows, while narrow crests drop fast into valleys, so one hike can jump from dark forest to open grass in under an hour. Old shepherd tracks now double as marked trails and rank among Romania's best-known routes for walkers and climbers. Even today, summer draws shepherds to these grasslands, with flocks spread near the skyline and wooden huts lined up like tiny seasonal hamlets. After sunset, the plateau fills with tales, many centred on odd rock shapes that people once saw as faces, animals or mountain spirits frozen in stone. One of the best-known tales says the Bucegi Sphinx was a sacred Dacian altar where people spoke to their god Zelmoxis and left offerings on the high plateau. Geologists credit wind, ice and centuries of weathering for those shapes, yet locals still enjoy saying which rocks watch the weather or guard the passes. Among them, a cluster of mushroom-like pillars stands on the high plateau, the weather-carved group known as Babel. Wind and ice shaped these rocks into stone hats balanced on thick necks, and locals began calling them the Old Women, as if they were gossiping above the clouds. One legend says they were once real grandmothers who stayed on the mountain to guide lost travellers, only to be frozen in place for watching over strangers for too long. Just a short walk away, another figure carved from the plateau waits, a rock face known as the Sphinx, staring out over the Bucegi from its own high ledge. From certain angles it looks like a human head, yet geologists credit nothing more exotic than wind, frost and time for shaping a single block of stone. Every late autumn, the Sphinx attracts visitors eager to see its rumoured pyramid of light, with believers convinced the brief glow carries healing power. Scientists point to light, perspective, and natural conditions, yet even they admit the thin air and wide horizon make the place feel different from the valleys below. Pilgrims, hikers, and casual tourists all share the same skyline here, many ending their route at the towering Caraiman cross. This steel monument crowns Mount Caraiman as a high-altitude memorial to Romanian soldiers of the First World War, and the peak became an open-air shrine rather than just another lookout. In the 1920s, metal beams and stone blocks had to be hauled up by ox carts and a mountain funicular, piece by piece, before workers could bolt the cross into the ridge. Today it rises more than 100 feet above the saddle and can be seen from towns along the Prahova Valley, so people far below still read the mountain line as a line of memory. Below the cross, the ground drops into a broad glacial bowl, where Mălăiești Valley cradles cliffs, meadows and streams within a natural amphitheatre. The route climbs in clear steps, each level steeper and less forgiving, until bare rock takes over and grass disappears underfoot. High peaks crowd the rim, so cloud and fog can pour in fast and sit over the basin like water in a stone basin. Narrow ledges and a final rock chimney turn the upper section into a serious test, with fixed aids that feel small once cold wind and early ice arrive. Mountain rescue teams warn the same thing every season. Someone will treat this as a simple walk, head up light, and need help before touching the ridge. Even so, Mălăiești keeps drawing climbers who use it to prepare for tougher routes elsewhere in the Carpathians. On another edge of Transylvania, Geamăna shows what happens when a valley is filled not with water and grass, but with thick, toxic sludge. The village was cleared by order so copper waste could pour in, and families who had lived close together for generations were scattered far away from the valley they once shared. Promises of a new settlement nearby faded, as many ended up miles from home, while the tailings pond in Geamăna kept rising year after year over their old streets. Today a church tower and a few roofs still break the surface, thin markers for houses, fields and orchards, now buried under rust-red, grey and orange layers of mine waste. On calm days, the lake looks almost unreal, with bright bands of colour caused by heavy metals. Yet nothing here is safe to drink, wash in, or farm around. The scar left by Geamăna often sends visitors onward to Râpa Roșie, where gullies and towers show what a valley looks like when only water has reshaped it. Here, soft red sandstone has been carved into Romania's Badlands, where ribs, spires and pits form something that looks more like a collapsed castle than a hillside. Rainstorms do the sculpting work, clawing at the slopes and dragging sand and gravel into fan-shaped piles that slowly redraw the edges of the ravine. Sunlight changes the whole scene by the hour, washing the walls in pale pink, then rust red, then almost purple as shadows slide across the amphitheatre of cliffs. Some visitors say the place feels like walking inside a frozen wave, because every ridge curls and leans as if the ground were caught mid-splash. Each new downpour cuts fresh grooves into the walls, so paths used one summer can vanish by the next, replaced by steeper drops and sharper ledges. The crumbling ribs of the ravine contrast sharply with Biertan's solid walls, as tight streets wind between houses and vineyards press against the old fortifications. This Saxon village anchored its whole plan to the church hill, with workshops, barns and wine cellars arranged in rings around the fortified centre. For centuries, that hilltop complex handled almost everything at once: worship, schooling, grain storage, and last resort shelter when danger reached the valley. Villagers timed work and life to church bells and council rules, right down to a small marriage room where couples in conflict were locked together until they settled their disputes. In recent years, Biertan has become a key stop during Hayfelen Week, when fortified churches host concerts, dances, craft shows, and long tables of Saxon food among barns and vines. Visitors now cross courtyards that once sheltered livestock and grain, watching folk bands and costume parades under towers first built to keep raiders out. At the centre stands the village's best-known landmark, the Biertan Fortified Church. So impressive it helped earn Biertan a place on UNESCO's list of fortified Transylvanian villages. From a distance it reads almost like a compact castle, with 3 belts of stone walls, towers and gates wrapped around a tall church crowned by steep red roofs. The main hall rises on the hill like a grounded ship, with 3 naves under ribbed ceilings and slim windows that once served as both stained glass and watch posts. Bastions crowd close around it, each once used for grain, tools or shelter, so the complex feels more like a tiny walled town than a single church. Heavy doors and intricate locks guarded the interior, yet inside, a painted altar and carved choir stalls show that daily worship mattered as much as defence. More than a place of worship, the church was the Saxon community's power centre, where rules were set, disputes settled, and news shared after services. For centuries, major festivals and market days followed the church calendar, so people planned planting, harvest, and even travel around dates announced from this hill. Even today, many Saxon families who moved away return for baptisms, weddings, and memorials, keeping the church as their spiritual home and link to Biertan. Walkways along the inner walls now offer calm views over tiled roofs and vineyards, while arrow slits and firing positions hint at how seriously past villagers prepared for siege. Defensive rings around Biertan find an older cousin in the Oraști peaks, Sarmizegetusa Regia, fortified capital of stone and sacred circles. This hilltop complex once held the Dacian king's seat and key sanctuaries side by side, so decisions about war, trade and belief were all made within one defended perimeter. Terraces step down the slope like broad stone stairs, built to support wooden houses, ritual platforms and workspaces in a tight grid above the surrounding valleys. In the sacred area, round and rectangular sanctuaries are lined so precisely that many archaeologists suspect links to sky watching, calendars, or complex ritual timing. A network of buried ceramic pipes carried spring water into the fortress, protecting supply for nobles and ceremonies even when enemies pressed in from below. Broken walls and column bases now mark the outline of a capital whose destruction by Rome still shapes how Romania talks about its oldest roots. Below these mountain ruins stands another seat of power, Corvin Castle, a Gothic fortress so dramatic it has doubled as both a historic residence and a haunted abbey in films like The Nun. The Hunyadi family turned it into a stone statement of status, with tall towers, sharp roofs and a long drawbridge built to impress allies as much as it warned enemies to stay back. A raven clutching a gold ring appears in coats of arms and carvings, tied to a family tale of lost royal jewellery and supposed noble blood that rivals were careful not to challenge openly. In the inner courtyard, a well drops far below the paving stones and carries a legend that prisoners of war dug it for years under the promise of freedom that never came. An inscription on the stone, often read as "You have water but no soul," keeps the story alive. The once practical well is now one of the castle's most haunting places. Another popular claim says Vlad the Impaler was imprisoned here, but most historians agree his main captivity was at Visegrad near Budapest, not within these walls. Beyond rumour, the design shows pure intent. Grand halls for audiences, cramped stairways between defence towers, and outer walls arranged to project power more than comfort. For the Hunyadi dynasty, controlling this fortress meant holding a key route through Transylvania, so the complex worked as both high-status home and lever of regional influence. Modern directors and crews now use its courtyards, galleries and bridge as ready-made sets whenever they need a believable medieval stronghold with a dark edge. Heavy industry wrapped itself around Corvin's hill, with furnaces and rolling mills in Hunedoara city, forging the rails, beams and machinery that pushed Romania into the modern age. For much of the 20th century, the steel plant's glow and noise set the rhythm of daily life, and many families measured time by shift changes rather than seasons. Housing blocks and streets spread in careful lines near the works, built so thousands of workers could walk to the gates in minutes at the start of each shift. As production fell and parts of the mill shut down or paused, huge halls and chimneys remained like empty shells, forcing Hunedoara to rethink its future beyond ore and molten metal. Concrete yards become grass lanes and dirt tracks in Bâlea, where children grow up between streams, tree lines, and simple wooden fences. Mornings begin with wood smoke and cowbells instead of traffic, as people head into the forest, feed livestock, and tend small plots of potatoes, cabbage, and grain. In a region famous for gold, this village built its livelihood on sand, hauled along narrow tracks to a distant glass factory, while the ore stayed locked in the surrounding hills. Families still shape their year around hayfields, timberwork, and moving animals between meadows and mountain slopes. life built on forestry and small plots here flows toward Viscri, with defensive walls, barnyards, and blue-washed houses still part of daily life. The village grew around a fortified church, built so people could rush inside with animals and grain whenever danger rolled over the hills. Many places emptied as young people left, but Viscri found new energy by turning old Saxon houses and barns into guest rooms instead of letting them fall apart. Traditional skills stayed useful, with carpenters repairing beams by hand, potters firing clay in small kilns, and blacksmiths passing their craft from parent to child. Tourism arrived under tight local rules, with limits on new buildings and paint colours, so the village could earn money without losing its shape. People often say Viscri survived because everyone treated each courtyard and gate like part of a shared museum and refused to swap wooden barns and fences for cheap concrete. In courtyards behind those blue doors, the steady hum of wooden spinning wheels still drifts through the village. Traditional wool spinning starts with fleece washed in big tubs, teased apart by hand, then twisted into long, steady threads on simple wooden wheels. Older spinners say you can hear a good yarn in the smooth pace of the wheel, and children learn by watching that rhythm before they touch the fleece. On cold evenings, several wheels may run at once, and courtyards fill with wool dust, wood smoke, and chatter as neighbours work and trade news over the creak of the pedals. Many village grandmothers learned this as children and now pass it on, with 3 generations often spinning, winding and chatting over a shared pile of fleece. Visitors sometimes walk away wearing socks that were wool on a fence the week before, a full sheep-to-feet story woven into every loop of yarn. Above these homes stands that old stronghold, a church ringed with defensive towers where people once hid and now gather to sell their wool goods. Viscri Fortified Church acted as both chapel and shield, with rooms inside the walls used for grain, tools, and sometimes animals when danger reached the village. During raids, families could retreat inside and rely on stores of grain, clothing, and tools packed into small rooms, treating the church almost like a sealed survival bunker. Today, visitors climb the main tower and look out over blue-painted houses, farmyards and craft workshops, seeing how village life still circles around this walled church. Bells, barns and spinning wheels shrink to a speck as tyres grip cold asphalt and the Transfăgărășan highway threads through the high spine of the mountains. The road was ordered after tanks rolled into Czechoslovakia, built so troops could cross the Carpathians fast if a similar invasion ever hit Romania. Instead of civilian crews, thousands of young soldiers blasted their way through cliffs, using millions of pounds of explosives to clear whole chunks of rock in one go. That military purpose never truly came to pass. Instead, a hit car show crowned the highway the world's best driving road, and today, people cross oceans just to experience it. Heavy snow and ice close the route for much of the year, so it opens only from early summer to fall, on a schedule set by the mountain rather than any government plan. Curves, tunnels and steep drops feel wild enough, but drivers get an extra jolt when brown bears stroll out of the forest and sit almost casually beside the road. These animals normally search for food in thick woods, but some now treat car windows like drive-thrus, swapping hours of digging for berries and beetles for a few tossed snacks. In the forest, a hungry one can spend half a day ripping open ant mounds, hoovering biting insects with its long tongue, because even tiny ants add up to a big energy boost. Summer turns into school time, as mother bears lead cubs to fallen logs and berry bushes, and teach them which trunks hide grubs and which branches are worth climbing for fruit. When two males want the same patch of forest or the same mate, they rear up and slam into each other, roaring so loudly that saplings bend and smaller animals scatter. Hot days reveal a gentler side as they slip into cold streams, soaking like giant dogs in a tub and batting at fish that wander too close to their paws. Winter snow pushes most bears into dens under roots or rocks, where they sleep through the worst cold, while the highway lies almost empty and the forest stays still. Some break that pattern, waking early and padding back toward the asphalt to nose around for food from tourists who ignored "do not feed the bears" warnings. Recent attacks on visitors have pushed rangers and officials to repeat one simple rule: stay inside the car, keep moving, and never turn these wild predators into roadside pets. Past the bear-filled bends, a still glassy bowl of water comes into view. Bâlea Lake, a glacial pool perched high among sharp mountain peaks. It rests about 6,700 feet, up in a cirque carved by ice, and even in midsummer, stubborn snow patches often cling to the slopes around it. On calm days, the surface turns into a giant mirror, doubling cliffs, cabins, and cable cars so neatly that rock and reflection almost swap places. Each winter, crews cut blocks of ice straight from the frozen lake to build a full hotel, bar, and even a tiny church, all made from walls that melt away again in spring. Sudden mountain storms can slam in fast, flipping the lake from clear blue to frothy grey and sending hikers racing for shelter around the shore chalets. When the weather settles, small lodges, terraces and trailheads turn this high basin into a busy stop for drivers, skiers and hikers looping off the Transfăgărășan. Water spilling out of this cold bowl gathers into a fast stream, then drops in one long jump at Bâlea Waterfall, one of the tallest falls on the north side of the Fortified Mountains. Snowmelt and mountain rain power the flow, and in late spring it can roar so loudly that hikers have to shout to talk on the viewing terraces. In winter, spray freezes to the rock, and parts of the drop turn into thick ice sheets, attracting climbers who treat the frozen wall like a steep training ground. Local guides say kids test their nerve near the base, edging to the mist line until the spray soaks them and sends them laughing back to drier stones. The fine drizzle that hangs in the air helps moss, ferns and small alpine flowers cling to cracks where there is barely any soil. As the torrent calms downstream, it threads through meadows and rocky shelves before joining smaller streams that link this valley to the higher ridges above the road. One of the glacial basins those waters help sustain is Capra Lake, its clear waters tucked among high peaks and alpine grass near the top stretch of the Transfăgărășan. From above, it looks like a giant coin of blue-green glass dropped into a ring of grey rock, with short, wind-bent grass and tiny flowers pressed right up against the shore. This small glacial pool looks like a natural treasure placed on the surface, much like the far more literal treasure that has drawn miners to Roșia Montana's slopes for centuries. The village sits in a bowl of cut-open hills where painted houses, old mining buildings and scarred pits crowd around valleys riddled with shafts and tunnel mouths. Beneath those streets lies a maze of Roman-era galleries, where miners hacked gold from solid rock by hand and built one of Europe's largest Roman underground mining networks. Centuries later, local resistance to a proposed open-pit mine gave rise to FanFest, where music, art and guided tunnel walks celebrate the valley's history. Elsewhere, a volcanic crater holds a lake born from fire, its smooth surface glowing between spruce trunks while the broken rim of the old eruption curls around it. This is Lake Sfânta, Romania's only natural volcanic lake, a near-round bowl of greenish-blue water resting inside the shell of an extinct volcano. An explosive eruption blasted a huge crater into the mountain. Long after the lava cooled, rain and underground springs filled it, and the lake we see today took shape. No rivers flow in or out. Rain and small springs keep the water clear but low in minerals, more like a permanent forest rain pool than a typical mountain lake. On misty mornings, spruce trunks and crater walls blur into pale shapes, and birds skim so close that their reflections look like a second flock flying upside down. One legend says a broken wedding promise cursed the valley, and the bride's tears filled the crater. The lake took St. Anne's name, and visitors still treat its waters with respect. In summer, visitors reach the shore by sandy paths, but bans on noisy boats and large buildings preserve its quiet character. The stillness continues in Mălâncrav, with rows of Saxon houses, farmyards and hilltop church looking much as they did generations ago. Long plots stretch out behind those homes into orchards and hayfields, and many families still keep fruit trees, barns and livestock in patterns inherited from Saxon farmers. Shared wells, wooden gates, hand-built fences, and the fortified church at the centre all help the village function like a living museum of rural Saxon life, rather than a modernised farm town. Fields and orchards here feel worlds apart from Bucegi, a mountain town whose busy streets, hiking trails, and winter sports all hinge on the steep walls of the Prahova Valley. Cliffs rise so close above the houses that the skyline is half rooftops, half sheer rock, with cable cars lifting straight out of town toward the high Bucegi plateau. Snow turns this palace into a ski playground, with slopes, sled runs and icy paths, drawing families who treat every heavy snowfall as the start of the busy season. Tales cling to those cliffs, with many people reading carved-looking faces and odd stone pillars as giants or guardians watching over the valley. Households often tie their income directly to the mountains, running guest houses, guiding groups, renting gear, or cooking for visitors pouring off trains and buses. All that mountain energy frames one more surprise above the streets: Cantacuzino Castle, built in the neo-Romanian style for wide, open views of the Bucegi walls behind it. It was built as a summer residence for Prince Gheorghe Grigore Cantacuzino, a wealthy aristocrat who wanted a prestigious mountain home that also honoured his ancestors. The building feels like a mountain lodge transformed into a palace, with arcades, carved balconies and steep roofs scaled up from traditional Romanian house designs. Inside, painted ceilings, wood panelling, and patterned tiles turn each room into a showpiece, while large windows frame cliffs instead of city streets. Terraces and staircases spill into the gardens, where fountains, lawns and flower beds guide almost every path toward another full-frame view of the peaks. The grounds double as both park and lookout, with benches and tree-lined walks placed for visitors to watch clouds drift across the Bucegi like a slow daily performance. Over time, the castle has hosted film crews, art shows and concerts, yet its mountain character remains unchanged. Guides like to describe foggy days when mist wraps the slopes so tightly the castle seems to stand alone on a rocky island above the valley. High-altitude architecture takes a playful turn at the clay castle of the Valley of Fairies, with clay and wood buildings whose storybook curves melt into the surrounding slopes and forests. Walls ripple as if pinched and folded by hand, with rounded windows, uneven roofs, and soft earth tones that make the whole place look like a village sculpted from honey-coloured icing. Roofs lean at odd angles, chimneys pop up like curious noses, and doorways seem built for fairies before people. Together they make simple clay and would feel almost alive. High on its basalt hill, Rimetea fortress rises as a stone counterpoint to the clay castle, trading fairy tale curves for hard walls that once guarded traders and townsfolk. Inside those walls, villagers crowded in with carts, tools and livestock, and the fortress became a packed refuge whenever danger swept across the region. Storerooms in the upper fortress, including the Tower of the Larders, held enough food for whole communities to outlast danger while daily life continued in cramped courtyards. Steep lanes and narrow gates climb through 3 defensive zones, where guards scan the horizon as neighbours shared water, grain, and news. During outbreaks of plague and waves of invasion, people locked up homes below and climbed to Rimetea instead, placing their faith in its layered walls and high perch. Local stories warned that anyone who hoarded supplies inside the fortress would soon meet misfortune. The lesson was simple: survival depended on sharing, not selfishness. Today, visitors can imagine more than 400 people packed inside the fortress as goats bleat, carts rattle, and worried voices carry between the towers. Those crowded days now live on below the hill, where traders and travellers stroll through Rimetea town, beneath the fortress that once kept the entire community safe. Market stalls line the streets where salt, cloth and grain once arrived by cart, and locals still swap jokes about whose ancestors haggled hardest as caravans rolled through. Painted facades and steep roofs reflect both Saxon and Romanian roots, and some families say their recipes and surnames travelled the same trade routes as their goods. Roads that once carried merchants now lead to wilder ground, with stone ridges and open pastures stretching across Piatra Craiului National Park. Above the village runs a narrow limestone crest nearly 25 miles long, and people joke that sheep know the ridge before the streets because they graze on slopes as steep as stairs. Life here still follows the rhythm of animals and fields, with households planning their days around livestock, hay, and simple homegrown food. Summer evenings bring flocks to the meadows, hay stacked on wooden frames, and cowbells drifting across the fields, while bears, wolves, and lynx keep to the darker forest nearby. Winter snow covers many fields, yet some households still haul fodder to barns near the tree line, because cattle and sheep need daily care, even when paths freeze hard. Children often mark the year by simple events: sheep moving uphill, cheese huts opening, and the first fresh wolf or bear tracks pressed into thawed mud. Park rangers and locals regularly swap news about pasture conditions, forest health, and wildlife tracks, so everyday conversations build a shared picture of how the region is doing. Heavy snow and long distances make basic tasks harder, so neighbours rely on wood stoves, shared help, and strong legs instead of easy roads and modern services. A short walk here can cross farm plots, spruce forest and bare rock, and for many residents, living beside hooves, paws and wings feels completely normal. Along the highest cliffs and ledges, one nimble neighbour handles the steep ground better than anything else: the chamois. Its coat grows dark and thick in winter, then lightens with summer, while a bold stripe across each cheek gives the face a distinctive mask-like pattern. Both males and females carry short black horns that curve backward, so the whole herd stands out against the limestone. Each hoof works like a natural climbing shoe, with a hard outer rim and softer centre that grips tiny cracks, letting chamois cross sheer rock with remarkable confidence. When danger appears, a single bound can carry one several yards, followed by a dash up ledges that leave even experienced hikers searching for another route. Flowers, herbs, grasses and leaves make up most of the diet, yet every few bites the herd pauses to scan the slopes for wolves, lynx or bears. Winter brings a different challenge, as the animals scrape through snow and ice with their hooves to reach buried plants, while the youngest learn by following every move. Older chamois often stand watch from higher ledges, as younger animals test their footing below, each generation learning the mountain from the one before. Few animals move across these cliffs with such speed and balance, even on narrow ledges where a single misstep could send most creatures tumbling. High above these cliff runners, the golden eagle rides the wind, watching the same ridges and gullies that chamois use as their rocky highway. Its body is dark brown, with a warm golden shine on the back of the neck, and huge wings spread wider than a tall person is tall, turning this bird into a flying shadow over Piatra Craiului. Eyes work like high-power zoom lenses, spotting a rabbit or careless marmot on a slope far below, while the eagle itself looks almost relaxed in the sky. Hunting starts with patience. It circles, waits, then folds its wings and drops in a silent dive, hitting prey with claws so strong they can pin an animal before it even knows what happened. Golden eagles have been seen knocking larger animals off ledges, then gliding down to feed. Gravity becomes part of the hunting plan. Around here, they eat a mixed mountain menu of rodents, birds, young foxes, and sometimes chamois kids, helping keep numbers of smaller animals in check. Strong winds over the limestone ridge lift the eagles high, so they glide for minutes without a wing beat and keep watch over everything below. As the bird patrols the sky above forest edges and pasture lines, its path traces the boundary where the mountains meet Măgura village. Wooden houses with steep roofs dot the hills like toy blocks, with plank fences and faded gates beneath bands of red and gold autumn trees. Around the homes, long meadows sweep toward patches of spruce and beech forest, where hay racks, grazing cows and narrow dirt tracks connect the village to the higher slopes. Beyond these hills lies Sașiți, where steep-roofed houses, old walls, and careful farming keep nature and tradition closely tied. The fortified church and tall clock tower rise above pastel homes and wooden gates, while meadows, orchards, hay barns, grazing animals, and narrow lanes fill the rolling hills below. Nature and tradition shape everyday life, with neat rows of beehives lining the slopes, and many families still producing honey from wildflower nectar at home. Old fruit trees support another habit, as apples, plums and pears are boiled down into jams and thick spreads using recipes passed quietly from one kitchen to the next. Blue pottery, carved wood, and small mixed farms link local craft to local food, so handmade plates and homegrown preserves feel like parts of the same rural puzzle. In recent years, one tart stalk has joined this pattern of fields and jars, pulling local pride towards Sașiț's rhubarb traditions. Long rows of pink-green stems now fill garden plots and village fields, and many cooks treat it as half vegetable, half candy, once it hits the jam pan. Families turn those sour stalks into thick jams, bright syrups and soft cakes, so a single crop now links backyard soil, kitchen steam and market tables. Residents say this crop has helped revive old fields, and younger farmers now have a reason to plant, harvest and sell something that feels both rooted and fresh. Rhubarb sweets now travel beyond pantry shelves to nearby towns, carrying the village's sharp and sweet tradition to places like Sighișoara and its busy medieval streets. Within the citadel, tall, narrow houses painted in soft blues, yellows and pinks line cobbled lanes, where everyday footsteps follow routes first laid out for Saxon merchants and guards. School bags, shopping, and parked cars now share space with watchtowers, thick fortifications, and gateways once built to keep enemy armies at bay. Old craft guilds live on in the names of the remaining defensive towers, and some families still trace trades like metalwork and woodwork back to those medieval professions. After dark, window light and restaurant chatter spill between the stone facades, and people still call this hilltop community home before anything else. Festivals bring together modern concerts, food stalls, Saxon traditions and church bells, so every celebration reflects both past and present. Many visitors call it living inside a postcard, yet locals still hang laundry across centuries-old stonework, and everyday life continues among the old defences. Higher up, narrow lanes converge on a large gatehouse, where timbered walls and tiled roofs frame the town's best-known landmark. At the centre of the old stronghold stands the clock tower, once the citadel's main entrance and administrative centre. Near its face, carved lindenwood figures rotate with the days of the week, and time in Sighișoara has long been marked by tiny moving characters instead of just numbers. Inside, steep wooden stairs lead through rooms filled with old tools, clocks and local artefacts before reaching an open platform with wide views over red roofs and the Tarnava Valley. Long ago, the town council met above the gate to decide taxes and rules, stacking politics directly above the busy entry point of the city. Fires and lightning have damaged the tower more than once, yet each repair kept it as the main symbol of the citadel, rather than replacing it with something new. Today, the History Museum fills its levels, while the clock and figurines still track the passing hours for people walking below. Just beyond its upper balcony stands the Gothic church on the hill, a hilltop sanctuary that has watched over the medieval citadel for centuries. Three naves, pointed windows, a tall unplastered tower, and restored frescoes give it a strong Gothic look inside and out, with murals that turn the walls into a painted record of belief. For generations, people climbed the covered stairway to attend services, celebrate weddings, mourn at funerals, and pray for the families living below the hill. Today, it is one of Sigishora's most important religious landmarks and houses a liturgical museum with artifacts from Saxon churches whose congregations have long disappeared. Within the same region, cliffs and narrow river bends define Cele Turții as limestone walls rise high above the Hașdate River. The gorge looks like a giant stone crack, with pale and grey faces standing almost straight up while the river threads through the bottom like a silver rope. Over a very long time, the river chewed into Jurassic limestone, washing away weaker layers and leaving tall pillars, overhangs and ledges now loved by hikers and climbers. Dozens of caves and crevices along the canyon hold rare plants, bats, butterflies and nesting birds, turning shaded corners into small shelters shaped entirely by erosion. Spring and storm flows can push the river higher and faster, shifting gravel bars and pools so the gorge floor slowly redraws itself over the years. People in nearby communities have long used the gorge for grazing, escaping the summer heat, and more recently for picnics, camping and cliff sports, tying daily life to this carved corridor. Along the edges where rock meets scrub and grass, one adaptable hunter tracks mice and birds under the cliffs, the red fox watching the ground life around the gorge. Its coat is rusty orange above and pale underneath, with black legs and a long bushy tail tipped in white that helps it keep balance across uneven slopes. Tall ears and a narrow muzzle give it exceptional hearing and smell, so even the faintest rustle in the grass or a food scent near a campsite can lead straight to dinner. Here, hunting is all about quick decisions. One moment a fox stalks a vole through meadow grass, the next it snaps up beetles, berries, or drops scraps when the easier meal appears. Winter demands another strategy, as it listens for movement beneath the snow, before leaping nose first like a furry arrow to catch mice it never even sees. That flexible diet lets it survive almost anywhere, from village edges to the far reaches of the valley, with rodents one day and fruit or discarded food the next. Dens lie in riverbanks, beneath rocks, or inside old burrows where parents raise pups that soon pounce on leaves and sticks to practice hunting. Many families choose den sites near fields and scrub, allowing adults to slip quickly between sheltered tunnels and open hunting grounds with their young close behind. By keeping rodent numbers in check, the fox helps maintain balance throughout the area, while larger predators focus on bigger prey. Its greatest challenges come from larger carnivores, vehicles and harsh winters, so each animal often shifts den sites and hunting routes to stay one step ahead of danger. That preference for small mammals and birds sometimes brings the fox into competition with the beech marten, an agile mammal equally at home on rocky ledges and in the treetops. Its body is slim and flexible, with brown fur across the back, a sharp white bib on the throat, and a long tail that acts as a counterbalance while it scrambles over stones and branches. After dark, it slips from crevices, hollow logs and cliff cracks to hunt, moving like a shadow across the ground and low trunks. It eats almost anything, from rodents and small birds to insects, apples, cherries, grapes and other fruit, so it can still find food when prey is scarce. Summer often turns it into an orchard raider, while winter shifts the menu back toward mice, rats and leftover carcasses. That flexible diet also benefits natural balance. It controls rodents and spreads the seeds of the fruits it eats through its droppings. Around the gorge, beech martens usually stay out of sight, living alone and marking territories with scent so rivals know which ledges and hollow trees are already claimed. Some even venture into barns and roof spaces, earning a local reputation as the night guest that slips past most fences unnoticed. Life on these rocky slopes still comes with risks. Silent owls and other night raptors can snatch an unwary marten, so every dash across open ground is a race against talons in the dark. One stands out for sheer size and power, the Eurasian eagle owl, Europe's largest owl and a dominant predator of Cele Târzi's limestone walls. With huge orange eyes, it stares straight ahead like twin searchlights, helping it spot a tiny mouse far away even when the light is almost gone. Those piercing eyes sit beneath feather ears that are not real ears at all. They are clever tufts that change its outline and give it a stern, almost cartoon boss look. When it leaves its rocky perch, broad wings carry it through the night with near silent flight, so prey usually never hears danger coming. That stealth matches an equally varied diet. Unlike picky hunters, it eats rats, mice, rabbits, birds, and even hedgehogs, taking whatever is easiest to catch that night. What's amazing is that this owl can tackle prey nearly as big as itself, from rabbits to large birds, more like a feathered big cat than a gentle storybook owl. As the seasons change, the Eurasian eagle owl fluffs its thick feathers, hugs sheltered rock ledges, and stays still for long periods to save energy while it waits for safer moments to fly. Once fully grown, it has very few natural enemies, so it often sits above other predators on the cliffs, watching foxes, martins, and smaller raptors as if checking on its hunting team. Even so, its main troubles come from people, as climbing, noise, and changes to rocky nesting areas can scare off breeding pairs or stop them from raising young successfully. Not far from its rocky hunting grounds, an enormous underground world of carved salt chambers and a still, dark lake waits inside Turda salt mine. Inside, walls and ceilings ripple like frozen waves, all carved from solid rock salt, so each chamber feels cut from a giant block of crystal. Those glittering halls took centuries to create. Miners chipped them out by hand, and stories say their whole world tasted of salt because of the mineral-powered work, trade, and daily life. Over time, the rhythm of the mine shaped how people worked, moved goods and planned journeys, with salt flowing out while carts and caravans arrived from every direction. Bright lights and walkways now line the salt halls, and visitors leave this glittering underworld with tales that follow them all the way to Dracula's famous Bran castle. The fortress stands on a rocky hill like a real-life storybook stronghold, its tall towers and steep roofs perfect for vampire rumours, but built to watch over a busy mountain pass. For centuries, guards here controlled the route between Transylvania and Wallachia, checking wagons, charging customs taxes, and blocking unsafe or suspicious travellers. Traders hauling salt, wool, and spices knew this castle could either clear their path or stop their goods, and its walls became a huge stone referee for long-distance commerce. Bram Stoker's Dracula later gave the fortress worldwide fame, but the real bite in its story comes from border power, trade control, and the way its hilltop position shaped life below. Narrow stairways, tight corridors, and lookout points reveal a practical design, built for defenders to guard the pass quickly, rather than glide dramatically like caped vampires. Over time, royal owners and leaders added furniture, art, and more comfortable rooms, and the hard military outpost became a lived-in residence with mountain views. Today, crowds arrive chasing Dracula myths, but often leave talking about trade routes, borders, and old weapons, surprised that this vampire castle spent most of its history on business and defence. Trade once funneled through the pass below, and that steady traffic helped Bran village take shape as a busy neighbour to its famous hilltop guardian. Wooden houses, steep roofs and barns cluster around narrow lanes, with many households still keeping animals, and gardens in a way that fits old mountain habits. Local sayings link the village mood to the castle above, joking that barking dogs and sudden winds mean the stone guardian is restless. Market stalls stack Dracula magnets beside smoked cheese, honey, and cured meat, where vampire myths sit alongside food shaped by long-practiced rural traditions. Roads leading out of Bran connect it to larger Saxon centres and old trade towns, guiding travellers toward the historic walls, museums, and distinctive houses of Sibiu. Many of those houses feature eyebrow-shaped dormer windows nicknamed the Eyes of Sibiu, making the streets look as though they are being watched from above. City markets still draw in cheese, jams, meat, honey, and handmade tools from nearby villages, and the central squares offer an easy view of countryside life within a town of walls and towers. Potters, woodcarvers, and textile workers use methods rooted in rural workshops, while museums and craft fairs help these skills stay alive and pass on to new artisans. That steady link to surrounding farms and Saxon villages means Sibiu feels like a compact map of southern Transylvania, where rural traditions sit side by side with offices, cafes, and schools. Each summer, the Sibiu International Theatre Festival turns streets, parks, and squares into performance spaces, with hundreds of shows bringing together theatre, dance, circus, and music on a citywide stage. Historic buildings become backdrops for acrobats, actors, and bands, so the old walls become part of the celebration instead of just the setting. When the performances end, everyday life quickly returns, with cafes, neighbourhood routines, and local traditions once again filling the old town. All these threads meet in the central historic square, where markets, meetings, and celebrations have shaped Sibiu's character for centuries. Around its edges stand old merchant and guild houses, once used to set prices, agree rules, and argue over who could trade inside the walls. Cellars and side passages beneath and beside the square kept grain, wine and tools close at hand, so the open space could switch quickly between quiet plaza and crowded fair. This was the place where deals were checked in public, and oaths were spoken aloud, with stone and air, as witnesses to city business. On busy days, rows of stalls stacked with bread, cheese and cured meat turned the square into a huge shared table, and produce from nearby villages filled. Council announcements once rang out here before newspapers or radio, using open ground and assembled crowds as a simple broadcast system. Today, shops, cafes and small events keep the square active, holding on to its old role as a common meeting space even as the city modernises around it. One side of the square leads to the Lutheran Cathedral of St Mary, whose tall Gothic steeple stands as a symbol of Saxon faith. The tower rises high above the rooftops, crowned by 4 small corner turrets that once signalled the city's right to hand down the harshest punishments. Its height also made the steeple a valuable watch point, where guards and fire watchers scanned the streets for smoke, danger, or trouble spreading below. For generations, Saxon worship, major announcements and solemn ceremonies gathered within these walls, and the cathedral stood at the centre of the city's spiritual life. Stone by stone, this cathedral reflects civic power, law and belief, standing almost eye to eye with another key symbol of Sibiu's authority, the council's tower. The tower rises between the great and small squares like a stone gatekeeper, its ground floor passage once controlling who and what could move between the 2 busy spaces. Over time it shifted roles, from part of the fortification system to firewatch post, granary and museum, always tied to watching, storing or guarding the life of the city around it. Stone arches beneath the tower once framed the path of merchants and carts toward Kisnedy, where textiles and crafts reshaped the town's future. There, fortified walls and towers wrapped around houses and workshops, protecting the places where raw wool became cloth that reached markets far beyond the surrounding hills. Sheep on nearby pastures supplied the fleece, so the story of every garment began on the hillsides before passing through skilled local hands. From there, weaver guilds set rules for spinning, dyeing and weaving, and their stamped marks on finished cloth served as early signs of quality and craftsmanship. Market days filled the streets with folded textiles and bundled rolls, while wagons carried fabric outward and returned with coins, goods, and fresh news. Over time, skills passed down through families stood beside memories of sieges and harsh winters, so woven patterns and local stories became equally lasting parts of Kisnadi's identity. The town's partnership of workshops and fortifications finds a rural cousin in Maramureș, with wooden architecture and farming traditions still central to community life. Here, tall timber churches rise over fields and hay meadows, their slim spires and shingled roofs giving small villages a vertical signature against the mountains. Many home entrances are marked by carved wooden gates, covered in suns, spirals, and plant shapes that people treat as good luck symbols for the family inside. Daily work, cutting grass, tending animals, and carving wood, often happens alongside folk songs and simple dances, and regular chores become small shared rituals. That tight bond between land, craft, and belief reaches its brightest point in the cold season, when Maramureș winter traditions turn snowy lanes into paths for carols and masks. Children and young people step into the cold in thick coats, scarves, and embroidered pieces, carrying a shining star for Steaua as they sing at every open gate. After each song, hosts hand out kolații, apples, walnuts, and other treats, so bags slowly fill with gifts that taste like winter and village gratitude. Capra, the goat, adds playful chaos, with a dancer hidden under a goat head and clacking jaw, jumping and spinning in a bright costume to kick out bad luck with laughter. Brondoshi take the role of noisy guardians, wrapping themselves in white outfits, sheepskin masks, red tassels and heavy bells, then stomping through streets to shake away evil spirits. Villagers say welcoming these masked groups brings courage and good fortune for the new year, turning each doorway visit into a small blessing. Between bursts of song and goat dances, horse-drawn carts keep moving, hauling the fuel and fodder that make these cold season celebrations possible. In many rural areas, these carts still travel long, narrow roads as everyday transport, carrying people and goods where tractors or cars are rare or too expensive. Long wooden bodies roll on iron or rubber wheels, piled high with hay, logs, or sacks of grain, each one a slow-moving piece of farm life. On small farms, they move freshly cut hay, manure, tools and harvested crops between fields and barns, much like four-legged pickup trucks. Strong horses learn every bend and hill, often guided by short calls or clicks, so the daily path between field, forest and yard feels almost like a well-practiced dance. In winter, carts leave frosty courtyards with steam rising from the horses' backs as firewood heads to the homes that depend on it through the cold months. Warmer months bring tall haystacks, branches or building timber, and horsepower still has a place, alongside tractors and trucks. Harnesses sometimes carry tassels, ribbons or small metal charms, and each team has its own look with a touch of local style. And in Breb village, these carts pass tall wooden gates and old churches, where Sundays still mean traditional clothes and shared walks to worship. Men and women often wear crisp white shirts with dark vests or skirts, while women add patterned aprons and a neat headdress that signal respect for church and pride in local style. Wooden houses have high roofs, wide eaves and thick beams, shapes that shed snow and rain easily and give each home a strong, clear outline on the street. Pots and bright cloth hang on fences or outer walls, with outdoor space doubling as storage and a drying area, while everyday cooking and clothing stay on display. Many homes stand behind Maramuresh wooden gates, whose hand-carved patterns mark family signatures and the region's woodcraft tradition. Motifs such as suns, crosses, ropes and tree of life designs are more than decoration. They carry ideas of light, faith, protection and hope for strong roots and good harvests. Big timber gates can feel almost like wooden arches into a different world, and local belief holds that a well-carved entrance helps keep trouble at the road and good luck inside the yard. That love of carved wood and symbols also appears in churchyards, most clearly at Bârșana Monastery, with its tall wooden spires and dense ornament. The main church stands on a hill with a slim tower and steep shingled roof, built using traditional wooden techniques, so the whole structure feels like one piece of timber reaching upward. Around it, other wooden buildings, chapels, galleries and living quarters circle the courtyard, creating a shared space for prayer, work and daily life. Across the complex, posts and railings repeat village gate motifs such as crosses, rope bands and tree of life designs. Those details frame an active convent where nuns and visitors gather for services and feast days, so the spires serve as daily meeting points rather than just distant landmarks. Between the buildings, flower beds carefully tended by the nuns fill the courtyard with bright colour beneath the tall timber spires. Many visitors call it a wooden sanctuary, where the craftsmanship seen in barns and gates reappears in delicate balconies, arches and towers devoted to faith. For many pilgrims and travellers, Bârsană is also a highlight among Maramureș's wooden churches and carved gates. Meanwhile, the colourful wooden crosses and witty epitaphs at the merry cemetery of Săpanță push the region's love of carving and faith into a playful, tongue-in-cheek view of life and death. Each cross is painted in bright blue and other bold colours, often with simple scenes from the person's work or daily life. So the cemetery reads like a field of small portraits. Short verses carved into the wood mention drinking, accidents, stubbornness, or jokes, and even serious events take on warm humour that makes many visitors smile. Local families see these lines as honest mini-biographies, accepting that a full life includes flaws and laughs, as well as work and faith, and believing that sharing all of it keeps memories strong. The same region that honours memory in wood also protects land in Maramureș Mountains Natural Park, keeping forests and pastures ready for future generations. Dense forests climb sharp ridges and drop into broad valleys, and this protected park is widely seen as one of Europe's last wild mountain areas. Here, unpredictable weather still shapes daily life. Fast-building storms can slam into alpine meadows and forests, and a calm afternoon quickly becomes a harsh test in the high country. Protection rules limit building and heavy industry, yet allow careful forestry and grazing, so the park guards nature while keeping long-standing mountain livelihoods alive. Away from the open meadows, dense woodland blocks lighten sound, and someone who steps only a short way off the path can feel suddenly cut off from the outside world. Then, nights in this range belong to predators, and among the shadows crossing ridges and forests, one hunter helps keep prey numbers in balance. A grey wolf in Maramureș Mountains. Natural Park looks like a moving piece of the forest itself, with a coat of browns and greys that matches the trunks, rocks and moss. When several wolves travel together, they move as a tight pack with clear leaders, and each animal seems to know exactly when to lead, follow, or flank. Many adults form long-term pairs, and this loyal bond helps the pack stay organised, defend good hunting areas, and share food. In these forests and on these ridges, they prefer to hunt at night or in dim light, relying on cover and careful stalking before rushing in with short, explosive bursts of speed. Packs often move along the edges of clearings and open meadows, where plant eaters step out to feed and sometimes lose track of danger. After hard hunts, a pack may rest in thick cover or among rocks, and sleeping wolves can look like rough logs until one ear flicks at a small sound. Their howl can roll over a whole valley like a long siren, but to other wolves it is a detailed message about where they are, who they are, and sometimes what they just found. They eat mainly plant-eating animals, and by taking the weak or careless ones, they help stop overgrazing, which keeps the park's forests, meadows, and valleys healthier. One large plant eater draws special focus, and many eyes watch the open ground, where a heavy-footed grazer wanders, the red deer. They often step out in herds, and for a moment, the clearing looks like a cautious meeting of long-legged neighbours, all checking that the place feels safe. Males grow antlers that they shed and regrow, and during the mating season they roar and clash those antlers in loud contests that can be heard across hills. Family groups led by adult females move between trees and open ground, and younger deer simply copy every turn, pause and sprint of the older animals. When they graze, heads go down but ears stay high, ready to swing toward even a tiny snap of a twig that might mean a wolf or a person nearby. A red deer can switch from calm feeding to a sudden burst of speed, jumping over logs and rocks with such smooth moves that it almost looks like it rehearsed the route. In colder months, herds bunch closer under cover, sharing space in spots where wind hits less hard and snow piles up more slowly. Their hooves press clear tracks into soft ground, and rangers can read those marks like a simple map of where they fed, rested, and bolted away. While these herds help shape life in the mountains, another place helps shape the life of a country, the city of Alba Iulia, where modern Romania took form. The city feels like a history book, built in stone, with Roman ruins, old walls, churches, and wide gates all stacked inside one urban maze. Over time, it has been a border camp, a power base for princes, and a political stage, so different rulers have all left their marks within walking distance of each other. Alba Iulia is called the city where modern Romania was born, because leaders once gathered here to agree that Transylvania should join Romania as one nation. That vote changed maps and minds, and people still talk about the moment, as if the country took a big, clear breath and decided who it wanted to be. Today the place carries this story with pride, and many Romanians treat a visit here almost like checking in with the starting line of their national identity. Every year on National Day, huge crowds gather here, and streets fill with flags, uniforms, and families wrapped in scarves against early winter air. Military parades roll past, historical scenes are reenacted, concerts and church services run side by side, and the whole city turns into one giant stage for memory and pride. Choirs sing, priests bless, and fireworks crack overhead, all centred around one strong symbol that holds these events together: the old fortress in the middle of the city. That fortified core is Alba Carolina Citadel, an enormous Vauban-style fortress built over older Roman and medieval defences, and now the city's most famous landmark. Its star-shaped walls were designed to trap and confuse attackers, and today those same angles send visitors along long, zigzag routes instead of straight roads. Under plazas and courtyards lie traces of past forts and towns, so each step across the citadel crosses layers of Roman, medieval, and Habsburg history in one place. Local stories talk about tunnels under the fortress, and many kids like to imagine secret passages, hidden chests of coins, and whispered messages carried underground. On busy days, guards in historical uniforms march and perform changing of the guard rituals at the big gates, bringing old military discipline to life. Inside the walls stand cathedrals, museums, and open squares, so the former military base now hosts concerts, parades, and national events instead of battles. Past the fortress streets, the country's drama shifts upward into the Transylvanian Alps, where the Făgăraș Mountains hold many of Romania's tallest peaks. High ridges rise above the tree line like long stone roofs, and between them, cold glacial lakes sit in hollows, smooth and blue, until sudden winds push waves across them. Weather can flip fast here, turning a bright pasture into a foggy puzzle, and hikers joke that the Făgăraș can change its mood faster than a tired kid at bedtime. Above the trees, summer brings flocks of sheep to grass-covered plateaus, and simple wooden huts produce strong, salty mountain cheese from fresh milk. Shepherds follow paths their parents and grandparents used, walking mile after mile on narrow trails and knowing safe shortcuts long before maps or GPS. Night on these high pastures can feel almost unreal, with stars so sharp and close that some locals say the Făgăraș is where the sky comes down to listen. Old tales warn of fogs that hide cliffs and of strange bell sounds near remote lakes, stories told partly to scare children and partly to keep adults careful in the high country. Even with modern gear, life above the tree line still depends on planning for storms, late snow, and long walks to the nearest village or shelter. All these ridges line up into one long spine of rock, and at the very top of that spine stands a single champion of height, Moldoveanu Peak, Romania's highest summit. It looks like a sharp-backed pyramid of stone, with steep grassy flanks and rocky ribs dropping into valleys where tiny glacial lakes shine far below. Reaching it means hours on narrow paths and steep rocks, with fog, rain or cold wind arriving without warning, and a clear, calm summit day feels like winning a small mountain lottery. Up there, the peak seems too harsh for small animals, yet down among mossy logs and dripping roots, one amphibian feels right at home: the fire salamander. Its glossy black body splashed with yellow works like a bright hazard sign, and if it feels threatened, glands in its skin can release strong poison to warn off attackers. Most days it lies hidden under fallen branches or thick leaf piles, waiting for cool, dim hours before slipping out to snap up slugs, worms and insects with a quick tongue. Old myths say salamanders can sense bad weather, and some hikers still joke that spotting one near camp means rain is lining up behind the clouds. Unlike many amphibians that leap away at the first scare, this one often stays still, relying on its bold pattern and toxins to send a clear back-off message. Its favourite haunts are tiny streams, springs and soggy hollows, and biologists see its presence as an indication that clean water and healthy forests still endure. On wet nights, several salamanders may shuffle over the leaves at once, their yellow patches dotting the ground like slow-moving sparks in the dark. While this hunter works close to soil and stone, another hunter in these mountains chooses speed and height instead, racing after prey high in the air. That aerial specialist is the peregrine falcon, a bird famous for dives so fast they make the cliffs into its own vertical hunting track. Its body is shaped like a small jet, with pointed wings, a smooth grey back, and dark helmet markings that give it a tough, focused look. When it hunts, it spots other birds high above the ground, climbs even higher, then drops in a tight dive that can exceed 200 miles per hour. If nature has a turbo mode, this is it. One powerful hit in that dive can knock a pigeon or duck out of the sky, and the falcon catches the falling meal and tears into meat with its sharp hooked beak. On high ledges, a pair may perch close together, calmly cleaning feathers and watching the valley below like two small guards posted on a balcony. Instead of building twig nests, peregrines usually scrape a shallow hollow in gravel or dust on a safe shelf, far above most ground predators and curious people. Their eyesight can pick out prey at huge distances, and one playful idea says a peregrine could outwatch almost any fan at a sports game, if it ever cared who was winning. After years of trouble caused by harmful chemicals, protection efforts helped this falcon bounce back, and sharp calls now ring again around many high cliffs and tall buildings. In the wider region, life looks very different down on soft hills and farm fields, where speed in the sky is swapped for slow days of work and steady village routines. That grounded world includes places like Crits, a Saxon-rooted community shaped by careful farming, colourful homes, and long-held traditions in rural Transylvania. Around it, small fields and soft hills roll away in every direction, and many families still grow crops and keep animals in low-intensity ways that accidentally help wildlife too. Tall gates open into long yards with barns, orchards and workshops behind the main house, so one doorway can hide a whole mini-world of food, tools and daily work. Village life here still revolves around church bells and solid walls, a Saxon tradition best seen at Prejma Fortified Church, one of Transylvania's great refuge churches. Unlike castles built for nobles, this fortress was built for the whole community, with strong walls around a church where farmers and craftspeople sheltered during raids. Behind the thick stone walls, hundreds of tiny rooms once held grain, tools and valuables, letting villagers cook, sleep and work through long sieges without leaving the courtyard. Today, visitors climb stairways, walk the galleries, and peer into those wall rooms, trying to imagine the noise, crowding and whispered prayers when hundreds of people squeezed inside. Away from stone defences and narrow lanes, communities and nature meet in a patchwork of fields, woods and karst valleys across the Apuseni Mountains. Long winters, steep paths, and scattered hamlets made life here hard, yet families stayed for grazing, timber, clean water, and a strong sense of independence. Villages built routines around cutting hay on sharp slopes, stacking it high, and hauling it on carts or sleds, timing every move to weather and daylight instead of to office clocks. Forest work, simple carpentry, and small fields often mixed in one yard, so one household might keep axes, cheese racks, and hay tools ready for whatever the day demanded. Neighbours in some valleys still talk about old help days when groups moved together from farm to farm, finishing one family's heavy jobs before rolling on to the next. Through all of this, sheep graze on high meadows and lower fields, tying daily schedules to animal movement and feeding times instead of to town squares. That steady rhythm leads to one of the region's defining traditions: sheep grazing and seasonal transhumance between lowland villages and mountain pastures. Each year, long lines of sheep follow old paths, and herders say they can read the season just by how quickly hooves climb and how eagerly animals rush into fresh grass. Up on summer grazing grounds, simple huts turn milk into strong cheeses, and each flock's flavour changes with the mix of herbs and flowers the sheep eat. Nights on the move can be harsh with rain, wind and the chance of a predator. So many shepherds sleep close to their flocks, coats pulled tight and ears tuned to the sound of bells. Some locals joke about paths blessed by wool, routes where so many flocks have passed that it feels wrong if a year goes by without the ring of bells and the shuffle of hooves. This way of moving animals does more than feed families. It keeps alpine meadows open, limits bushes, and supports plants and small creatures that depend on grazed grass. Children in mountain households often learn spring and autumn routes like lessons, knowing the springs, shelters, and danger spots long before the maps of big cities. Along these trails, some of the most typical settlements are small places like Mălăiești village, where forests, meadows, and farmsteads still anchor everyday life to the surrounding hills. In such mountain hamlets, families often handle animals, hay and woodwork in one yard, so sheds and barns stay busy with feeding, cutting and repairs. Day plans usually follow grass and weather, with work starting when fields dry, animals need moving, or hay can finally be stacked without risking a storm. Many guides and locals treat one village in particular as their main base for exploring the region's caves and forest trails, Ariashini. Guest houses, farmyards and woodpiles sit between wooded slopes and river valleys, so a day here can easily shift from home-cooked meals to ice caves, waterfalls or remote hamlets. Conversations about calm mornings, mist over meadows, and long hay days often end with one name: Bucegi. Hay here is still cut by hand with long scythes on narrow, sloping fields. This gentler approach helps rare flowers and insects survive, where heavy machines would wipe them out. Fog often settles in the hollows while old wooden shacks and haystacks rise above it, and local tales speak of floating barns and cattle that walk through clouds on their way to pasture. Days in these misty meadows often end with bread and branza de boerduf, a strong sheep's cheese aged in fir bark for a sharp, woody kick. Fresh sheep's milk first becomes a young cheese, then is chopped, salted, and packed into bark or sheepskin until it ferments into a punchy paste, prized by mountain herders. It is then scooped or crumbled out in pale yellow chunks and spread thick on warm bread or stuffed into grilled polenta balls called boules. The salty, smoky bite of this cheese travels well, from backpacks to campfires, across Romania's wild karst playground, the Padiș Plateau. Here, meadows can drop into giant sinkholes where whole stands of trees disappear, while cold underground rivers swallow waterfalls and send them roaring out again far away. Some paths cross dry valleys that seem ordinary, yet rain vanishes through limestone cracks and reappears as a roaring stream inside the mountain. The Eurasian lynx rely on these tangled Transylvanian woods for cover, stalking deer and hares along ridge lines that sit just beyond the karst clearings and sinkholes. Their bodies look like a mix between a big house cat and a tiny forest lion, with spotted fur, long legs, wide paws for snow, and black ear tufts that help them catch tiny sounds in the trees. Around the plateau, they move almost like smoke, slipping between trunks and rocks so softly that deer can pass nearby without knowing a watcher is only a few steps away. A lynx usually hunts at dusk or in the dark, hiding beside a game trail until its prey is close, then pouncing in one fast leap to grab the neck and end the chase almost instantly. These cats avoid people and open ground, choosing forests with thick undergrowth, cliffs and sinkholes that give them hidden paths and safe resting spots. When mating season arrives, males and females call with short, harsh cries and move across wide home ranges to find each other, then part ways again after the female becomes pregnant. The mother chooses a hidden den beneath roots, rocks or fallen branches, where blind kittens stay concealed while she hunts, then later practice stalking and pouncing close to the nest. Lynx help keep deer and hare numbers in check, so the forests around Apuseni do not end up overgrazed, which gives young trees and plants a better chance to grow. For rangers and local villagers, fresh lynx tracks or claw marks are like a wild thumbs up, showing these Transylvanian woods are still healthy enough to support a top predator. Conservation in these mountains is not only about claws and paw prints. Hosman adds carved doors, church walls and farm courtyards to the list of things kept safe. farm work still shapes daily life here, with families tending mixed herds, cutting hay, and baking thick loaves in wood-fired village ovens. Many restoration projects feel like family efforts, with locals repairing homes, repainting shutters, and reviving old skills to keep the village lived in. Courtyards often feel like mini festivals, with bread baking, choir practice and farm gossip all happening at once, so the village's past can be heard, smelled and tasted, not just read. At the centre of these efforts stands Hosman Fortified Church, an early Romanesque village church, later enclosed by defensive walls to protect the community in dangerous times. Its tower and ring of walls formed a stone safety net where villagers sheltered and used wall rooms, a granary, and a horseshoe-shaped bastion to protect food, tools, and themselves. Walkways hidden inside the walls let defenders move along the ramparts, while the church hall below kept its role as a place for prayer, turning the whole site into a compact church castle. And anyone tracing the path of wagons and traders across these hills eventually arrives at a larger stage for Saxon walls and commerce, the mountain-ringed city of Brașov. High ridges wrap around the old town like a stone collar, while thick walls, towers and gate streets created a guarded market where goods and languages met every day. Near key Carpathian passes, this city grew into a crossroads between Central Europe and the Balkans, where one square held fabrics, tools and spices from across half a continent. Its streets form between forest slopes and caravan roads, with mountain timber and pasture in one direction and distant trade routes in the other. Wool, cheese and timber came down from nearby villages, where merchants and craftsmen made them into cloth, beams and goods bound for distant towns and ports. Even today, trails, ski runs and grazing land sit just beyond apartment blocks and tram lines, so life here still feels like a steady handshake between countryside and city markets. Once each spring, those older ties burst into colour during Juni Brașovului, when riders in full traditional costume gather for a horseback parade through the historic Cheii Brașovului district. Horses dressed with ribbons and tassels clatter over the cobbles, while the Juni carry flags and old symbols meant to honour past defenders and the city's Romanian roots. Held on the first Sunday after Orthodox Easter, the event briefly brings village traditions back to Brașov's modern streets, celebrating the rural communities that fed the city for centuries. At the edge of the old square stands one dark-roofed giant, the Black Church, Romania's largest Gothic church, and a landmark of the Transylvanian Saxons. Its name comes from a huge fire that smoked and darkened the outer walls and roof tiles, so locals began calling it Black, even though the stone still carries pale carvings and sharp arches. Inside, a massive pipe organ towers over the pews, powerful enough to fill concerts with rolling waves of sound that feel more like a storm than a gentle hymn. Old gravestones and carved coats of arms line the interior, acting as stone nameplates for guilds, merchants, and city families who helped fund and guard the church. Bright woven carpets from former trade routes hang along the sides, reflecting the days when Brașov traded salt, tools, and cloth for designs from far beyond these mountains. Taken together, organ pipes, carved stone, and imported textiles make the Black Church a memory bank of Brașov's trading past and its Saxon builders. Step back outside, and those heavy walls suddenly open onto stalls, festivals, and everyday chatter spread across the cobbles of Council Square. This has been Brașov's main market ground for centuries, where traders arrived from Transylvania, Wallachia, Greece, Turkey, and beyond to argue over grain, cloth, and spices. That square also witnessed darker scenes, with a pillory and public executions that made its centre a place of witch trials and punishment, as well as trade and celebration. Today, the mood leans back toward joy, as Council Square hosts concerts, National Day events, and big Christmas markets that light up the facades and draw visitors from across Romania. Old guild houses and museums around the edges keep watch over all this movement, their painted fronts and stone doorways framing every parade, protest, and street show. On busy evenings, busker music, church bells, and cafe voices drift together, so the square feels like Brașov's open-air living room. Food stalls fill the square during fairs, and one treat almost always appears: the Carpathian. Bakers start with soft yeast dough, cut it into long ribbons, then wrap those ribbons around a metal or wooden spit so it looks like a small chimney. The dough is brushed with butter, rolled in sugar, sometimes mixed with cocoa, cinnamon, or crushed nuts, then baked over coals or in hot ovens until crisp and glossy. Fresh cakes slide off the spit like warm sleeves, hollow inside, and can be rolled again in extra toppings, so each bite starts with crunch and ends with soft, stretchy crumb. Kids often pretend the hot, sugary tube is a telescope or horn before it disappears piece by piece, and sharing one in Council Square has become a family tradition. As the sweet smell drifts through the old walls and side streets, it becomes Brasov's edible welcome sign. And looking up from the stalls and steam, that sugary scene sits under a green slope that watches the whole city, Tampa Mountain. This protected forested peak overlooks Brasov, with trails and a cable car reaching viewpoints where the old town, its walls and distant mountain ranges unfold like a map below. Local legend says a dragon once lived in a cave on these heights, until a trick with lime and water made it burst apart. Some locals still say the mountain resembles a sleeping dragon. The crest holds the ruins of the lost Brasovia citadel and the giant Brasov sign, often compared to the Hollywood sign, keeping the ridge both the city's shield and billboard. Old traders and messengers who once passed under its shadow often continued across the plains to a seat of nobles and soldiers guarded by a broad moat, Transfăgărășan Fortress. Its brick and stone walls rise straight out of the water, with a single bridge for entry, so in tense times this place felt more like a defensive island than part of the streets around it. Grand halls, narrow passages, and thick cellars have seen princes, armies and prisoners, giving rise to tales of hidden cells, buried treasure, and silent walls. Step back from the bridge, take in the stone, water and wide plains, and Transylvania's mountain paths, villages, markets and fortresses feel like parts of one living world. This is Transylvania, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Northern Ireland, check out this video.